Hi everyone. I have just finished reading The Secret Mistress by Mary Ballog. A quick note, on Amazon it said this was book 3, but the story actually precedes the other two in the trilogy, so I probably made a mistake there. It didn't ruin the story at all, and I do have a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you guys. I will try to keep it brief. The story follows Edward and Angeline. She is a Dudley, sister of Jocelyn and Ferdinand, the two main characters in the other two stories. She runs into Edward and is dazzled by how proper he is. They go through their own drama in a very endearing story. They marry and have children 7 years hence, and their story ends. I have been trying to be brief in my notes on these stories, but I have to mention how endearing and likable I found Angeline to be. She's a chatty lady, and Lord, she can talk, but there is something very beautiful and lovely about it. In the other two stories, she was always a really funny character. She even has a catchphrase when referring to her husband, the provoking man as she calls him, but her chattiness is a great way to see through right into her thinking. I really liked her. Angeline is transparently open. She can't help herself, and that can be a way to get in trouble, but also it is a great way to remain self-assured. Most of us hold our words back because we're insecure, and I am not saying that we should all become chattering machines by default and unconsciously, but Angeline would pour her heart out and with it the truth constantly. When words can be used constructively as a map of our inner world to others, they are creative. And that's what she strikes me as, a creative mind, transparent and innocent. However, she also talks to hide her insecurities, to explain herself to the world, as she grew to adopt the narrative she had been told by her unloving mother and her bitter governess about herself. So, our words, our expression of our minds and hearts, can be creative vehicles to give ourselves to the world, or to hide away from it behind layers of protective walls. Edward was all proper, a true gentleman, but a cynical man who did not believe in love. So reality is a practical business, and Angeline rather frustrates him. She is his total opposite. He could be described as a bitter and rigid man who was jealous of the lives of others, lives with less rules than those he had imposed on himself. He had to learn to allow himself out of himself, to break through his vision of life as mere duty and find passion. Angeline, on the other hand, had to ground herself from her wild passion and fall in line. Not a rigid line, but a flowing one, with more structure than the emptiness of living things simply day by day. Edward's arc is interesting, as he's contrasted with Lord Widrow, a rake, someone who Edward hates. But I think it's because Widrow reminds Edward of his late brother, who was less proper than Edward, but yet loved by peers and family. I think we all have experienced this at some point. The jealousy of feeling like the world is unfair because we follow rules and get seemingly less than someone who is willing to break them. But Widrow is simply a man, capable of love and loyalty, just in a different way than Edward. That, to me, is the difference between law and faith. It is the difference between rigid structure and a necessary sin. Edward lived life within law, thinking it would be enough, but it wasn't until he found a way to balance both duty and passion that he wasn't whole. And who better to help him achieve this task than Angeline, someone so wild and so in touch with her inner world and emotions. She knew, for instance, that she wanted to marry him at first sight, and he thought that this was a senseless proposition. The other thing that I thought while reading this story was about the good and the bad, and the specific context in which it happens. These three elements are in constant flux and constantly dancing around one another. Being self-aware means also recognizing when these things change. Following rules can indeed have a lot of benefit for certain tasks and certain purposes, but always following rules will only leave you absent from your life. Breaking the rules will most definitely land you in trouble, but knowing when to break them or bend them, take risks to be wrong, that is how we meet life. Someone who is good by default because I have to be good lacks the choice that makes one a good person. Someone who simply refuses to let anyone bend him to their will is a petulant child who is impossible to rely on. No one knows him. So, Following either path unconsciously is equally destructive, or equally stagnating rather. Finding the way to dance in between them, and the times in our lives when each is the adequate choice to make, is liberating. But also, it is a lifelong task. And so, Edward and Angeline pulled one another, or rather invited one another from their extremes into a balanced dance that sways between the two. It was a lovely story about polar opposites. At least I thought so. And it's not just about being complementary or compatible, but choosing to give something yours, that is, something so very yours that it has become part of your identity, in service of discovering the rest of you, in order to fuse it all in a more whole version of yourself. At the end, the epilogue of this story was a lovely scene of giving birth, a very moving one. It was generic in its elements, but it was crafted in such a way that it pulled at the heartstrings. I am not sure how many of us had births such as the one described in that epilogue, but I sure hope that most of us did. And this finishes the Mistress trilogy, and I thank you guys for watching. And I think I will be moving to a different series now, so stay tuned. Thanks once again. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.